In this week's episode, I make a mess with some sealant. I get some ice in the boat. It's freezing. And I show you the main saloon. This is the main saloon. So I've done exactly what I did on the hatch, and I've sanded down the acrylic and I've put on Sika primer. But a little trick I'm going to use is I've taped these tongue depressors down against the plastic, so that when I put the sealant on and push it against the window frame, I'll have a spacing. So it's very important to have a spacing when you've got sealant, because if you squeeze the sealant in, if you squeeze the glass too much against the frame, it'll squeeze all of the sealant out. So it's very important to have that gap. And then when the sealant is completely dry, you can tighten it up a little bit more, and it kind of just gives it that little bit of extra seal. So now that I've got the lollipops guys in place, I'll put loads of sikaflex on that, which goes absolutely everywhere. Then I'll bolt it in, and that'll be that window. I got to clean off the edges. Then I've kind of taped around where I want the sealant to stay away from. So it's very important when you're doing anything with sealant or paint, to tape anything that you don't want the sealant to touch, because it will go everywhere that you don't want it to go. So make sure that you can only see what you're gonna put stuff on. Full disclosure, I've done 2 of these today already, so this is the 3rd one, so hopefully I'll be better at this one than I've been with the other 2. Yeah, so I didn't want to do one, film it and make absolute wreck of it. So anyway. So since I started, I actually haven't done like an overview of the boat, or I haven't shown any of you the layout or potential layout or what needs to be done and stuff like that. So before I do get started on that, sorry about the ambient noise. It's absolutely lashing rain and it's howling wind. So if you can hear that, sorry. Anyway, so this is the main saloon. This compression post is directly under the mast, and we've a compression post on either side as well to stop the hull from twisting. I'm going to use those compression posts for the main bulkheads in the center of the boat, and forward from that then will be the saloon with a table in the middle, and sofas either side that'll have will be sea berths as well, and probably a stove mounted on the wall, like a wood burning stove. This bulkhead is actually a watertight bulkhead. There can be a seal on the door as well, so if you do have a hull breach in the forward cabin, you can close the doors and you've got a watertight cabin. So we'll just head into the forepeak and I'll show you that. So this is the forward cabin, and the plan, so that's where the chain locker the chain comes down into the chain locker. And I'm going to build a fiberglass chain locker that will drain through a pipe out through the bilge and into the black water tank, which I think, I still haven't decided, but the black water tank might be there, it might be behind the diesel engine, behind the engine. So that's my diesel tank actually, I'm going to use a plastic diesel tank. But anyway, it's going to be a double berth in here, a little bit of floor space, maybe this much, and then the berth going back. Luckily I'm short, so is Neve, so it shouldn't be too bad. So each of these berths are actually going to be about 6'5" long, with storage in behind and underneath. There's a water tank here and a black water tank here, but I'll probably just not use that black water tank. So what else? Then we'll move into the galley. So obviously this is the companionway, and coming down from the companionway I'll have a galley to the port side, and on the starboard side I'll have my chart table. There's quite a lot on the original designs. There was actually a double berth way back, because the cockpit wasn't quite as big. But the cockpit's been lengthened, so there's no more berth in the back. So on either side of the companionway, I'll have some bulkheads that come out and over, and they'll close off the heads, which will be to starboard, and I'll have a double berth that'll actually be in the port side as well. So on the port side, double berth, starboard, I'll have the heads. So that layout should kind of afford me a nice, cozy boat, but use the space that's there as well. At the end of the video, I'm going to show you the CAD designs that I've been working on as well, because I want to 3D model the boat, build the interior in CAD, and then have the kind of main components CNC cut, and that'll mean I can bring it all in and just bolt it together more or less. There'll also be, there's a few questions about insulation as well. A steel boat condenses quite badly, and even today I've got a small heater in here and it's getting quite a lot of condensation. So I'll have 2 inches of spray foam insulation that'll go onto the steel, and what that'll do is it'll actually seal up the steel as well, and it'll keep the heat in when it's cold outside, and it'll keep the cool in when it's warm outside. Yeah. So in here we have the engine room. We've seen that in a previous video. We've seen the engine. So the engine room is here, and behind the engine room I'll have a black water tank, probably. I'll have my hot water systems and everything behind there. And behind the heads I'll have like a wet storage locker as well, that'll probably drain into the black water tank. All my steering system is behind there as well. I want to keep it as open as I can so that I can access the steering if the cables do fail. There is a tiller head as well, so that'll be for like a self-steering vane, but I'm planning on using the wheel steering, and if that fails then I'll have my tiller, so at least there's that kind of redundancy. When you're building a boat that you want to go quite long distance in, you have to build everything with a redundancy so that if it fails, you have a backup. I can't do a tour of the deck today because it's absolutely bucketing, and it's horrible outside. But in the next couple of weeks when the sun's shining, I'll do a bit of a deck tour, and I'll show you what my plans for the deck hardware are and stuff like that. So soon I'll have my rigging back as well. I got my rigging quote. It was a bit more than I had budgeted, but that's okay because I got extra stuff done that I wasn't planning on doing. The backstay is kind of bleeding out of the swage terminals. So I said, while I'm at it, I'll just do the entire rig. I have a brand new rig, and it can go anywhere in the world. So I'm a little bit more expensive, but it has to be done.
So basically what I did was I took the designs for the boat that I got from the designer, and I took all the sections that are on the plans and I broke them out into JPEGs, and then I set those JPEGs into SolidWorks, and I lofted my hull shape from that. I didn't have a huge amount of success, and the whole shape was kind of twisted and a bit funny, so I dropped that idea and I moved on to something else. So instead I took the kind of floor layout of the boat, and what I did was I lofted all of my solid kind of main structures from like the bulkhead and the compression posts and the engine room, and I kind of took all my measurements from there and tried to design the interior based on those measurements, because the original plans aren't what I want to use. So basically, hopefully at the end of that, I'll have a really good idea of kind of dimensions, how the boat's going to look, and how I'm going to build it basically. So that's kind of the plan with that, and that's what I'm hoping to achieve there.
So before I finish up for the day, I want to clear something up with a couple of my longer term subscribers. If you've been watching from the start, you'll know that I was restoring a 23-foot Achilles called Frantic, and that's where the name Frantic Sailing Adventures came from. That boat I still have it, but obviously this project has taken over, and I'll explain why. But that boat now is kind of, it's going to be, I want somebody to take it on, who's going to finish it and basically take me sailing. So if a young person who's interested in sailing and they also are interested in kind of finishing off a boat to go sailing, then that's the right project for them. So if you are in the south of Ireland and you're looking for a project, get on to me, and if I feel that you're really properly interested, you can have it, as long as you take me sailing, basically. The reason that I dropped that project and moved on to this project is pretty simple. I did an Atlantic crossing with two of my best friends, and I've popped their channel up here. We crossed over in December on his 36-foot steel Van der Staat that was actually built in this yard. And when I got to the other side, I kind of realized that I want something bigger. I want to be able to do what my mates are doing, and I want to be able to go cruising too. I couldn't have done that in the 23 footer. Well, I could have, but on my own, but not with anybody else. I mean, it's a very small boat. There's no headroom.
You're going to need a bigger boat.
So when I got back from the Caribbean, I realized that I wanted to start looking for something bigger, and in my head it was about a year away before I bought something else. So just before I had left, I'd moved into my van to save up some money to maybe potentially buy a house in the future, but I realized that that's not really what I want to do. So I took that money and I went looking for something else, thinking that, okay, maybe in a year's time I'll buy something, or if the right thing comes up now, maybe, I'm not sure. But I wasn't 100% sure what I was doing, as usual. So what I did was I went looking around and I saw a few 32-foot boats that were kind of in the price range that I was thinking I'd have that kind of money in about a year's time. So I went down to this yard looking at a few boats, and I was standing on the deck of a boat maybe 150 meters away from where I am now. And I looked over and saw Zora, and I was like, I recognize that boat. And about 2 years ago, I'd actually seen it advertised, and it went off. I went off the advertising site pretty quickly, so I kind of assumed somebody had bought it. So I inquired around the yard and found out actually it still is for sale. And I got hold of the guy, and we kind of looked around it, and I kind of kicked the tires a bit, and kind of thought, you know, maybe in 6 months I'll be able to take this project on. But after speaking to the guy for a while, and we came to an agreement on price, and I just took it because it was the boat I wanted, and between now and a year's time, this boat will be finished. So I actually ended up getting a much bigger boat for quite a lot less than I'd expected, with time to build it. So I'm kind of in a very ideal place right now, if you get me. But anyway, that was just for anybody who's kind of wondering why I dropped the other boat, wondering where it is, wondering what's happening with it. Basically, that's it. If you want the boat, come and get it. But you have to really want it. You have to want to go sailing, and you have to promise that you're going to take me sailing in it. So that's pretty much it. Thanks again to my new patrons. Really, really, really appreciate you putting your faith and money into this project, which is really, really good. I really do appreciate it. As always, do like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I think Google are listening, so I think if you give a round of applause, that helps too. Yeah. Anyway, see you again next week.